Good afternoon. My name is Tara Beebe. I'm the Vice President of Customer Experience here at Idelic. And we are really excited to have two fantastic speakers with us here this morning and thrilled to see so many people joining us for our second Fleet Leader Chat. I'm incredibly confident both Nick and Ben are going to be able to share some insights with everyone here today. And as I mentioned previously, we do have time set aside for questions. So feel free to use the chat. Let us know where you're from. You're welcome to put questions in there. You'll also see a QA button down there. We'll also be monitoring that. So if you want to put your questions in there anonymously, you're welcome to do so. And we will be tracking those. We'll have those answered at the end. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Nick Bartel. He's the CEO and co-founder of Idelic, and Ben Banks, Vice President of Operations at TCW, and most recently noted as Chairman of ATRI's Research Advisory Committee. So super excited to have both Ben and Nick with us today, and I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Tara, and welcome everyone to our Fleet Leader Chat. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. And as Tara just mentioned, I want to say from all of us at Idelic, congratulations again on the appointment as chairman of the ATRI Research Advisory Committee. ATRI, obviously a great organization. We know Rebecca Brewster very well and Dan Murray. We've had them both on multiple different programs that we've put together. The content that ATRI puts together, it's world class. It truly is second to none. And when those research reports come out, I'm the first to grab them and just scour through and see what we can do to help our customers. So, you know, we always say at Idelic that safety is a team sport. We win together, we lose together. So, you know, from all of us at Idelic, whose mission is to get drivers home safely each night, thank you very much for having that position and for going above and beyond outside of your regular duties to help our industry be safer.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, and it's certainly an honor to have another 2-year stint on the ATRI board, and especially as chair. I can't take too much credit. Rebecca and her team, they do all the heavy lifting. We're just we come up with a bunch of crazy ideas for research topics and trying to funnel them into the ones that are most fitting for the industry at the time. But it's truly an honor to serve on that committee again. Some very, very bright individuals, and just some awesome conversations we have around upcoming research. So good team, solid team there.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to the next report. So to start off, you know, TCW, you all have been a customer with us for about 3 years now. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation so that you can share your insights on where you found success in creating a best-in-class safety culture. You know, you've won multiple prestigious awards within the industry, one being the President's Trophy from the American Trucking Association, which is a very big deal in trucking. But first, before we get into TCW and your success, I'd love to learn, or I should say, I already know, I would love for the group to learn more about you and your background and how you got into trucking.
Yeah, sure. So I went to Georgia Southern University. I took the 5-year plan there. I thought I wanted to be an engineer, and didn't work out so well. So graduated in 2010. Not an ideal time to graduate college, of course. So I was looking for stability, and my degree ultimately was in logistics. So I was already in that category, but felt like trucking was the most stable thing possible, right? It didn't matter how bad the economy got or how good it was. It was, you know, trucks are going to continue to move. So seemed like a good fit. I'd actually taught to TCW my last 2 years of when I was in school, and I just, for whatever reason, knew I wanted to work there. Just, you know, family owned at the time. We're now employee owned business, but at the time we were still family owned. Just had good family values, ethics. Every employee I talked to that worked here was very driven and focused, just dedicated to what they did, and I don't know, just seemed like the right fit. So started there in actually started here in 2011 with their management development program, and been in Savannah ever since. Actually, came up as ops manager, terminal manager, and then eventually made my way to vice president about 5 years ago over our Western operations, which were Southeastern based. So it's really Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and most of Georgia. So the operations side on that side of the fleet, and then safety and risk for the rest of the fleet.
So with safety and risk, obviously at TCW, you know, your team is the front lines of risk mitigation, rolling out programs, technology, coaching, responding to incidents, managing losses, the whole gamut of safety. You know, what have you experienced with those two within safety and risk being together as kind of one core operational team?
Yeah, so that was kind of in place. My appreciation for safety has really grown naturally just working here, right? It's not something that I brought to the table. I've grown and developed here at TCW, thanks to, Scott George, our CEO. He is very, very passionate about safety, and strict on making no exceptions. Ronnie Holland, our safety director, started shortly prior to me, so we've got about the same amount of tenure here. But he brought an immense amount of experience when he came on board with us, and same thing, just has that drive and dedication. And I mean, sometimes I question him. He's sending emails off at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. It's like, dude, take a break, man. But he is just that committed. And anytime something comes up, it doesn't matter if it's minor or major, he's all over it. We've just got a super strong team that works well together. Jeremy Roll, our risk manager, he's fairly new to the role, but used to be a former terminal manager, so he's got that operational experience that meshes well with the risk side of things. But the two of them, myself, and then the rest of our compliance team, we're always talking about, all right, here's some past accidents. This is how they're developing, and kind of how, kind of reverting that back to the safety side of what could we have done to prevent that, and what can we change moving forward. So that constant collaboration is really, really key to continued success, really.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know we all know TCW has a very strong commitment to safety. We'll talk about the why here in a little bit, but I'd love to talk about first, so the group kind of understands what you work towards and why you work so hard at it. The what are the objectives for that operation in the coming year?
With regards to on the operation side or the safety side?
Yeah, I would say both.
Okay. We don't have any major milestone agenda items for this year, really. It's all about continuous improvement for us, making minor tweaks as we go along. By no means do we have this thing perfected, right? The moment we do, we talk a lot here about complacency. If we think we've got it figured out, that's you're going to be in trouble. So minor tweaks, just looking for just small things we can do to keep moving the needle forward, and just looking at the metrics we have today. Speed gauge is a big one that we rolled out about 8 years ago, and I remember seeing it was nothing to see drivers that had 5% and 6% speed gauge rankings, and now we're seeing terminals that have 0.22% speed gauge percentages, which is just incredible. So last year those would be 0.44. So the metrics we have today, keep driving progress in the ones that we have is kind of the ongoing mission. Yeah, that seems to be the objectives for everyone. How can we get better incrementally? Because when you do large swings, first and foremost, like any organization, big swings have a risk, but the small changes over a long period of time is really what makes the most impact. And I think a lot of our customers see that, especially when they implement our system, right? They want to get in, they want to understand it, they want to know what they have to do right now, and then they start building a program together with us to talk about long-term objectives and long-term goals. Right. So yeah, that makes complete sense. So, on your website, one of the things that I love, it says uncompromised safety for TCW, listed as a core value for the entire company. Why don't you go ahead and share what that means and how it informs your company's approach to safety? Yeah, certainly. So it's one of our 5 pillars to success. But I think sometimes people see uncompromised safety and they think, all right, that is the sole, it's uncompromised, right? That's the end all be. And I think it's a little bit misleading on that front. I think our motto really plays more of a factor onto that. If uncompromised safety was the absolute core priority, we would park the trucks on the fence and go home. Yep.
You wouldn't have any drivers.
Nobody get hurt, no
Yep.
accident. It's not reality, right? So our motto is a unified team with a disciplined focus. And I think if you take that approach to uncompromised safety and understand that, hey, we've got to move truck, we're going to run trucks, we've got to move freight, but we're not going to make exceptions to our safety guidelines and really common sense safety practices. And if you're disciplined in that and unified as a team and everyone believes in that, then I think that points you on the path to success, really. I know as a terminal manager, this was before the ELD mandate, but we were on ARVRDs for, I mean, before I started, so I think 15 years ago or so. And when I'd have a new driver come in and doing the interview, I'd say, hey, look, we're serious about safety here. If you go over your hours of service, you know, this, you and I are going to have a conversation, you know, and I can't tell you how many times drivers would laugh at me and say, oh, I heard that in my last job. And it's like, hey, try it and find out.
Yeah, it's real. Mess around, find out, right?
Yeah. We're not just going to talk about it. This is how we operate. And again, I think if everyone in your team believes that and upholds those standards, that's where you reach the kind of the uncompromised safety piece.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that's obviously you're setting a standard across the entire organization, and with any disciplined approach, there are hard decisions that have to be made. But when it comes to safety, I mean, we're the same way, right? There are truly very few exceptions to not be safe.
Right.
And it has to be that way, or else safety means nothing. I think that's kind of core to what safety means for a lot of organizations. And obviously, it's pretty clear with TCW that that's the same approach that we take. So, you talked a little bit about technology. Let's take a shift here. Let's talk about your approach to safety. You've obviously invested in a lot of different technologies to support that approach. I would assume, as we know, many of those solutions are designed to make better decisions using data, so data-driven decisions. However, as everyone in the industry knows, there are terabytes and terabytes of that data coming off of each truck every single day. And it feels like there's an overwhelming wave that just needs to keep crashing and crashing until you understand what to do with it. Obviously, with Idelic, with Safety Suite, we help that challenge in many different ways. But if you look at the sources themselves, right, drivers have data and records related to accidents, telematics, FMCSA, cameras, hours of service, mileage, hours, training, you name it. The list goes on and on. I think the average for each fleet in terms of technology and systems that they have tracking driver data, it's about 8 or 9. So how have you approached, you and TCW, I should say, the adoption and the implementation of new technology, knowing that it's just going to continue to add more data to what you're already dealing with today?
Yeah, certainly. So, I actually kind of relevant here. Made a comment on LinkedIn about ATRI and said that I'm personally not a big data analytic type person. I'm more about relevant data, and I think that applies here too. There's so many different points that we get today on our trucks. We've got Bendix collision mitigation and the full fusion wingman package. So just with that alone, there is just piles of data that you cannot possibly have enough manpower to sift through and say, all right, well, we've got a driver that had 15 lane change violations in 2 minutes. So our approach is more what data points can we focus on that will make the greatest impact. So we don't spend a lot of time in the weeds looking at small details. It's more high level, looking at the collision mitigation events, looking at speeding, core telematics events, driver history, and then Idelic really helps tremendously kind of bring all that together into one platform. So having that Bendix data in the Idelic platform rather than having Bendix over here, a spreadsheet here, and speed gauge over here, we've got everything housed in one single source. So it makes reference and all that per driver much easier to sift through.
Yeah, so we actually have a question that it's kind of related to this. I'm going to go off script here. Sorry, Tara. From Dan, it says top 3 areas of safety focus. Why don't you just share very quickly what those top areas are?
So speed gauge is certainly top 3. We feel very passionately that you can't count the number of accidents you prevented, right? But any of us that have been involved in litigation, that is always a question that comes up. If you're speeding, you're done. Even if you weren't at fault, that creates a major problem. So from a litigation standpoint, speed gauge has helped us tremendously there. And also, if you do have an accident, obviously, if you're following the speed limit instead of 5 or 10 over, you're mitigating the impact of that collision. So speed gauge is certainly top 3. The other 2 is kind of difficult. I'd say telematics is another big one. We keep a very close eye on our collision mitigation events or any telematics. The videos that we're getting daily, we sift through. We're normally reviewing those within 2 to 3 hours of them coming across our dashboard. 3 is probably more on the kind of ties into the PDPs, focusing on the drivers, the high risk drivers. So we look every 2 weeks, we look at our top 10 drivers in the fleet. So we're about 460 drivers, so pretty small sample size. But we'll look at our top 10 drivers in the Idelic risk score, analyze what the causation is for their high risk score, and then come up with a PDP to correct that behavior, whether it's speeding or fill in the blank. Maybe a driver that just started 2 months ago and they've already had 2 false hook connection issues. So it's that third one can kind of vary quite a bit. So, and I'm not sure I would say any of those 3 are priority. It's just kind of that's probably our top 3 areas that we focus on the most.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, a lot of our customers in that same vein, right? They want to reduce accidents, they want to lower driver turnover, and most importantly, they want to engage with the drivers in a meaningful way. We at Idelic, we talk about drivers need to be watched after, not watched over. And the best approach to improvement isn't discipline, right? It's about having those drivers become better and safer drivers because they want to be, because they know that you're helping them be that. Nobody wants to lose their job. We learned that very early, that no driver wants to lose their job. They want to drive, they want to be employed, and they want to be known as a good employee. But a lot of times they need coaching to help them get there. So if that is the approach versus, it's the carrot and the stick, right? We want people to be self-motivated, but we also want to coach them and keep them on the right path. So, you mentioned how you all at TCW have really empowered the drivers with that coaching and mentoring through the Master Coach program. I would love for you to share with the group of what that entails and the successes you found there.
Yeah, so our Master Coach program, we started, I believe, 8 years ago. Just an idea. I think it was Scott's idea, actually, our CEO, but we basically went to each terminal and identified a handful of drivers, try to keep it around 1 to 15 to 1 to 20 drivers. So if that makes sense. So pretty small number of drivers, but those drivers need to be very personable. They need to obviously have a good safety background too. You don't want a master coach that's speeding all over the place and have multiple accidents. So, very, very safety conscious, good at approaching others. And we kept developing that program. So now each terminal has at least 2 or 3 master coaches, depending on the size, some as many as 5. But those drivers are an extension of the safety program. They're not on we always have to tell them, hey, look, you're not the sheriff, right? If there's a driver, so bouncing back to speed gauge, we post those results monthly per terminal on every driver's speed gauge is posted in the terminal. So they can encourage drivers to work on their speed, but we don't want them going to drivers saying, hey, you did this wrong, or you did this wrong. They are positive reinforcers. And they talk about, we keep them informed too about new technology. So if we've got a new truck spec coming out, whether safety related or not, we'll communicate it to those drivers first so they can kind of spread the word out to the drivers. A lot of our terminal managers, most actually have come up through the management development program like myself, don't have CDLs, have no driving experience, and many of them are fairly young. So they're sometimes their coaching events are not as relatable to drivers that are, say, 50 or 60 years old, where those master coaches that that are experienced can have a much more reputable conversation with a driver about certain things. So it's been an awesome program. I think it's probably one of the biggest reasons for our safety success in the last 8 years. And you can our profitability, just about every metric you look at has improved since we rolled that platform out, that plan out 8 years ago.
That's it. I mean, that's fascinating to me, right? So it's a grassroots movement using, the peers of the drivers to help them be better with encouragement versus, another regulation or a discipline that they would assume at other fleets they're used to getting. And, I think that the best way for a driver to be safe is for them to want to be safe. And you've obviously created an environment within the driver pool that shows there are drivers that really care about the company and the culture. And it's not just them in their truck by themselves. It is a core piece of their employment and their tenureship with your fleet to say, I care about my job, I care about my company, and I want everyone else around me to have that same feeling and same motivation. And it's just fascinating that you've been able to create a program that drivers buy into, and it's this organic growth where it's not just one driver, right? seeing that driver care and coach and mentor and help others, that makes you want to do it for others yourself. So I'm assuming you're getting a lot of different buy-in across the fleet when others see those coaches making an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And we share an immense amount of data with them. We even share the accident cost for those master coaches as well. Of course, we redact driver names and all the details, or most of the details. We give them just core essential details, backing accident or something, but we'll show them the true cost of it. Say, hey, look, this one cost us 30 grand. So now, of course, being an ESOP now, an employee-owned company, that put a little some more teeth in that. So they are a little bit more passionate. But even before that, they would see these accidents and be like, wow, we were spending a lot of money on simple, bumps and bruises here and there. And they communicate that down to the other drivers. So they see the true dollar expense, not just the physical or, injuries and everything involved, but the true dollar expense of some of these minor things as well.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure that goes a long way. So obviously it's clear that your drivers, they're deeply involved in the success of your organization. I would imagine that has created a culture where others outside of TCW's walls are hearing about it and seeing it and want to be a part of it. How have these programs for empowerment and engagement with the drivers, how have they helped play into attracting new drivers?
It varies. It can be challenging at first. Some drivers that first come on, we are obviously very passionate about this, and some drivers it's a little overwhelming for them at first. So it takes a little longer runway to kind of get them fully bought into the safety culture. Now we have had drivers that really care about it. They're tired of they've driven at other fleets that did not care about safety, and they've certainly made their way to us just based on our commitment to safety and knowing that they're going to have a nice DOT compliant truck to drive every day, right?
Yeah, and how has that affected retention? I mean, obviously, if drivers feel like they're part of a program, part of a team, have you seen impacts there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think retention is always something we want to continue driving down, but we're having around 30% and have for a number of years. So the drivers we do lose are a lot of times safety related issues. We're very big on second chances and third chances. If we feel like a driver is coachable and buying into the program, we will obviously, put as much effort and time into developing that driver to make sure that we get them bought in. Now, sometimes we do make a bad hire and they come on board and they're obstinate and just have no interest in buying into the culture. And unfortunately, that's part of that 30% turnover sometimes is sometimes you have to move on and you don't want to poison the well by trying to retain drivers just because you can't mold them into to match the rest of the fleet. Sometimes you just have to move on. Yeah,
those are tough calls to make, but at the end of the day, they are always, in my experience, always the right calls.
Right.
So let's talk about our relationship a little bit. So with our experience of talking with all sorts of different fleets of all sorts of different sizes and having clients that also kind of span that gamut, we've encountered fleets that have too much data. We've encountered fleets that don't have enough data, fleets that have too many systems, don't have enough systems, fleets that don't have a safety foundation or culture at all that we help build with them and instill it into their operations. For you in TCW, what attracted you to the Idelic platform?
Obviously, the centralized point of reference for tons of data was one big piece, and the risk score. That was probably the most driving attraction for me personally. Historically, we tracked our risk score on a spreadsheet, like probably many on the call today. It's just not a lot of better options out there. And the more I looked at that risk score spreadsheet that we had, the less correlation I could find to accidents we were actually having. There were some outliers. There's a handful of drivers are just high risk, and if they have an accident, it's like, all right, well, we kind of saw that coming, right? But aside from that, there was no true correlation. So the AI piece of Idelic really drug us in, and we feel like that's going to be a continuously improving risk score based on more and more data, right? And we've seen some pretty dramatic improvements, especially in the last 2 years, as we've gotten more data into the system. So just today, last year on average, the drivers that had preventable accidents their risk score was twice that of our fleet average, which is pretty astounding, right? I don't know that it'll ever get to the point that says, hey, Bob's going to have an accident tomorrow. That's kind of far-fetched, but if it points us in the direction of, again, targeting those top 10 drivers or top 10%, whatever works best for your fleet, if statistically, they are at a much higher risk, and you can work on the PDPs to prevent it, that is monumental. It's huge.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about PDPs. Our PDPs, so the group knows, those are our professional development plans. It's a comprehensive coaching tool to influence driver behavior within our platform based on everything that Ben just mentioned in terms of the data aggregation and the risk identification. For that solution, I know you all just started adopting those a few months ago. What are you finding with the implementation of performance development plans for your drivers that are at risk?
So we've talked about this for a number of years, just never had a good way to track it. And so this platform has been really useful for us. I feel like a lot of times we were doing these PDPs already, but you just weren't tracking them, right? Or had no way to verify that there was a 30-day or 90-day follow-up. And hey, what is the other thing is are some PDPs even effective, right? So I think that's where this platform is so beneficial. The ability to create our own PDPs according to what needs our fleet has is really huge. But again, just the ability to enter them into the system, to know that they've been done. A lot of times the PDPs are not executed by safety; they're executed by a terminal manager. So the ability to go in the system and make sure that a terminal manager or whoever completed that task, and then if you want to have a 30-day or 90-day follow-up, especially like speeding. For speed gates, that's one that we have consecutive follow-ups, so that we have that conversation, but then we follow up and make sure that they're staying on track. And if not, we can assign a further PDP to continue developing that driver. So it's nice to have that structure and be able to track it so well.
Yeah, and that begs the question. I mean, we get this a lot from fleets that we talk to. How has the challenge of adoption of any new technology, how's that progressed with your team? Because the adage of who moved my cheese, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We hear that a lot. We also hear, I don't have the time or resources to implement something new. I'd love to hear your experience there, because a lot of times it kind of looks more difficult and bigger challenge than it actually entails, but you don't understand or realize that until you're actually doing it.
Yeah, I think you just take it one step at a time, right? Kind of going back to the start of the conversation, just small bits at a time. Don't, if you decide to go with Idelic, you don't have to take the whole platform in and do PDPs on week 2. Set those off for 6 months. If at 6 months you're not ready, set it off another 6 months. Focus on the highlights, and just that's what is nice about the platform is it's got so many different tools. We don't use probably half of the platform, if I'm honest, but as we keep kind of mastering certain areas, as we master PDPs and get all the plans in there, then we'll move on to other additional categories. But I think that kind of stair-step approach is really critical. We've not had to add any staff after we rolled Idelic out. I don't think it's necessary. I think if you've got sufficient staff to manage your safety program today, then this shouldn't really change anything if you're taking it one step at a time. I will say the data, we're very big on auditing data that goes into Idelic. That's one critical thing. Just because like the Bendix collision mitigation events, whether they're from Bendix or Trimble, it doesn't really discern whether it's a preventable collision mitigation event. And I'm not talking about a collision here. I'm talking about the actual collision hard braking event. The system can't really discern whether it's the driver did something wrong, or if there was an outside party that another car pulled out in front of them, that they had to slam on brakes. So we are big on auditing that data, making sure it's assignable as a violation to the driver before we do upload it in the platform. So that does take some time, but hey, it's time well invested.
Yeah, absolutely. Our watch list, obviously, you're utilizing that pretty heavily. You mentioned to me, you're actually showing the driver watch list scores to the drivers, and you're seeing some impact there. I'd love to hear what the reception was when you first posted that and said, hey, here are everyone's scores and how their risk stacks up against one another.
Yeah, so we started that not too long ago, and I mentioned we post the speed gauge scores monthly. So we started posting those Idelic scores right next to them. And first time we did it, drivers were coming in the office and asking terminal managers or calling Ronnie, our safety director, hey, why do I have an 80 risk score? What's going on here? And say, hey, here's the breakdown. So it's pretty cool, and they want to know how to get it down in many cases. So it's cool to kind of have that gamification and competitiveness to drive the scores down. I think posting it is really huge, especially when you have that a culture of safety, and they don't want their peers to see them as the highest risk driver at the terminal.
Yeah, I always say that, the best way for a driver to improve their safety is for the driver to improve their safety, right? They want to do it. They're self-motivated. There's a gamification piece. And it really, it's a piece of who they are as a person to say, I want to be better. And that's the best motivator for anything. We talked about a lot of what you've implemented, the success you've had, what you're focused on. I'd love for the group to hear, what are you most proud of at TCW, right? You've been there for a long time. You've done a lot of things. You've won a lot of awards. You've made a ton of impact. What's kind of a shining moment that you can reflect on?
Our people. That's probably the thing I'm most proud about. We just have an awesome team. I was at Georgia Southern University actually yesterday talking to their capstone logistics class. We do a lot of hiring out of universities, Georgia Southern, Mississippi State, and various others across the Southeast. But it's been really cool to see, my 13 years here, students come out of school just like myself, just the same career path I had, and come into the industry and have successful careers, and really kind of we've gone through a lot of transitions since I've been here. We used to be very divided, or not very divided, just we weren't as cohesive as we are today. I'll just say that. And it's been really cool to see that really come together full circle. And our drivers, it's just same thing for them. We've got a student driver training program now that 5 years ago I thought we would never do. We had the standard 2 years minimum experience requirement. We're hiring drivers straight out of school, and it's really awesome to see drivers just like those management development candidates coming out of school. They're coming straight out of CDL school and earning a career here, and it's really rewarding to see that take place.
That's fantastic. Yeah, the people are the best part of any company. That's true with us too. Truly, that is what motivates us. It's working with one another and seeing others be successful. So we talked about a lot, your uncompromised safety culture, the success you had with adopting technology and implementing new strategies, the Master Coach program, which again, I'm still fascinated with, and I want to learn more as we continue to talk here in the coming weeks. You're leveraging the PDPs, using the watch list, the adoption for the frontline managers and the drivers for new programs and ways of doing things. If you had to distill it down in your opinion and kind of your own experience, what could be a key takeaway for everyone on the call to say, if you really want to create a best-in-class safety culture, here's what your focus should be?
Oh, I think it goes back to the people, right? You've got to get everybody bought into the same program and not make exceptions. Again, I think our motto statement, unified team with a disciplined focus, keeps us between the guardrails. And I think if not saying you have to adopt that motto statement by any means, but the same kind of mentality. Hey, we're going to do it right, today, tomorrow, no exceptions. And I think that's a pretty strong approach to take.
Yeah, it has to be, right? That has to be the approach. And you're a clear example of it working very, very well. So we have a little bit of time left. I want to make sure we hit some questions from the audience. First question up, a little bit more tactical, with the consideration of speed limiters, how are you getting ready for this mandate?
So we actually have speed limiters on our trucks today. We're set at 66 miles an hour. That's a pretty tangled web. I've been asked that question several times at different conferences, and we're just in the Southeast, right? Yeah, we'll see how this unfolds. I think it's going to be a hard approach for FMCSA to answer and have a blanket speed limiter across the U.S. because you could argue that 66 is not effective in Kansas, right? You could probably argue you could travel 70 there. So, but we're locked in at 66 now. So hopefully we're good to go.
Yeah, that is a tangled web. You're absolutely right. Another one quickly, what do you do about distracted driving and cell phones? I'll just share. We have a couple fleets where it is truly uncompromised. One incident with a cell phone, you are gone. What's TCW's approach?
Yeah, so we actually had a fatality last year. One of our drivers here in Savannah that I actually knew, I'd known him for 5 years before he started working here. So, and it was the single vehicle rollover, just distracted driving related. So, we had focused on this for a number of years, but that accident drove us to move forward with inward facing cameras. That's a hard decision, but having said that, so we've got inward facing cameras rolled out. We do not have a zero tolerance on cell phones. My belief is that cell phones are a addiction, and we want to work with, and I'm not saying that, hey, if somebody wants to have a zero tolerance, that's an okay approach as well. I just feel like we kind of owe it to the drivers to coach them just like anything else. Hey, we might give you a chance. It's not going to be 4 or 5, right? I mean, it's going to be a short leash, but we've had some drivers we caught on inward facing cameras on their cell phones, and had very strong conversations and told them, hey, quite honestly, we lost one of our own last year because of this, and don't have any interest in going through that again. It's probably one of the biggest challenges I think our industry is facing. Especially I mentioned the new driver training program. A lot of those drivers are 23, 24. They've grown up their entire life with a cell phone in their hand. So we've just got to break the habit. It's a huge challenge though.
Yeah, the challenge I think as well is I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, right? Technology is only going to increase. That's the way we communicate, whether we're working or in our personal lives. So it is a part of us now, and it will be, I think, forever.
Yep.
One here, I think you have a great answer. How do you approach onboarding and retraining of drivers? And, do you have a specific system?
We do. Onboarding is for the new drivers is a minimum of 20 days training. Now, if we've got a driver that has 2 or 18 months experience minimum, verified experience, we do a 3-day training program there, minimum of 3 days. So we're very structured on that side of things, but from past that, we have 30, 60, 90-day follow-ups later on. We make sure the master coaches are reaching out to them, checking to see if they've got any questions, concerns. And then obviously we're keeping a very close eye on them from a telematics standpoint, speed gauge standpoint, especially in that first 6 months, and assigning any PDPs as needed. And of course, your standard orientation. We've done a lot of online training as well. So our orientation used to be, good gracious, 10 hours long. So by hour 6, the drivers are they're checked out, right? You're not being effective in the orientation. So we do a lot of preloading online, hazmat training, some things like that are pretty straightforward. We'll do that online, and then the orientation, the in-person orientation, is more about TCW particular things where we can have a more formal conversation one-on-one, where it's kind of back and forth type thing.
Yep, got it. One here, another one. I'm actually very interested in the answer. Do you offer any additional incentives or perks for the master coaches as part of that program?
We do. They're paid an additional 5% on top of their standard wage, and so it's a small price to pay, right? They're investing a lot more time in their day, and we do watch that. So we ask that they enter coaching events every time they have an interaction with a driver pertaining to safety, right? If they're just saying, hey, Bob, all right, whatever. But if they're coaching something, whether it's safety, operations, maintenance, whatever, we ask that they log those events, and we track those monthly. So, we've had some master coaches that didn't log the events and, weren't really showing a lot of initiative. So I think it's important you have some kind of metrics to make sure they're getting the job done, especially if you're going to be paying an additional wage to them to get it done.
Yeah, it's not to say that it's another job, but it is additional job duties that obviously they're stepping up and wanting to do. So there are some requirements there, I'd imagine, just to make sure everyone is doing what you expect and the program is doing what it's supposed to.
Absolutely.
Another one here, you mentioned the focus on the top 10% of drivers in the Idelic system. How frequently are you reviewing that driver watch list and scores for any type of trends?
So we look at that. So for the top 10 drivers, we look at that every 2 weeks. As far as overall trends, I look at that monthly. When I'm referring to the preventable crashes being twice that of our fleet average, I look at that on a monthly basis. Our compliance team is keeping a close eye on that, really just about daily. But typically you're not seeing anything shocking come up on there, right? If a driver goes from 50 to 70, it's because he had an accident or fill in the blank, something you already know about. So yeah, every 2 weeks is really when we're looking at the real high risk drivers. Got it.
And then related to that, how do you keep professional development plans from feeling punitive for the drivers? And can you share any success stories about, how a PDP that was completed changed driver behavior?
Oh, I think part of it should be punitive, right? Hey, if you don't want to have a PDP, don't.
That's right. That's right. There's a reason why you're doing it.
Yep. So, and we do try to keep them positive. I will say that. I don't have a particular example off mind that. I mean, it happens all the time. I'm very confident that the PDPs are just a documented follow-up. If you have a preventable accident and you have an accident, we have an accident review every single time, right? That kind of is a PDP, but the PDPs are for obviously a vast, larger array of things. So, directly correlating them to progress is kind of difficult, but I'm convinced that they're impactful. Yeah. Another one here. How do you address any opposition to inward-facing cameras from the driver? The person who asked that our company is concerned with increased turnover if rolled out. I have video of drivers taking a piece of gum and putting it up on the camera. We saved that one, and that is a strategy they've tried to skirt the camera system. But how have you dealt with it? Yeah. So when we roll these out, we rolled out Savannah first, my home terminal. And we talked about a third of the drivers, and I was like, all right, that's good. They'll spread the word to the other drivers. Made an assumption, and they know what they say about assumptions. Yeah. It was anarchy around here for 2 days. We finally got it settled down. I talked to just about every driver here, and from that point, I made the decision that either myself or the other VP of operations for the other region, we were going to sit down and talk to every single driver at every single terminal before we installed them in the truck. And not necessarily one-on-one, but we had group sessions, 5, 6, no more than about 7 or 8 drivers. But we talked to them about, hey, look, we lost one of our own. This is why this is important. This is what we're looking for. We're not looking for, if you've got a bottle of water and you take a sip of water, we're not going to, write you up for it. But if you have the cell phone out, we're going to have a conversation. So I think setting those clear expectations out there, we let them know who has access to the videos, which is a small number of people. Gave them the full paper on all the details and answered any questions they had. And from that point forward, it was very successful. We lost 2 drivers fleet-wide rolling the inward-facing cameras out. Both of them were senior drivers, which have the biggest opposition to this. Younger drivers typically had 0 issues. It was your drivers that had 30, 35 years of driving experience that probably aren't texting anyway, that had the hardest time adjusting to this. Yeah. We're at time, but we have one more important question I want to make sure that we hit. So please stay on if you can. It's related to safety awards. So what do you do for safety awards for safe driving, cash bonuses, safety patches, what's factored in, what's not? I think a quick overview might be helpful. Yeah, sure. So we do a percentage bonus to the drivers, 1% safety bonus for, got some basic criteria, no injuries, no preventable accidents. And then every quarter we'll do an additional 1% fleet wide if we have 0 critical preventable crashes in the fleet. So a couple of bonuses there. And then we do one thing that's pretty cool, actually was a driver suggestion, based on speed gauge, is we give out these patches that are 0 heroes. So if a driver goes a month with 0 speeding violations on speed gauge, we'll send them a patch that has that, and they can iron it onto their uniform. So that's been a pretty cool thing as well. So we really try to recognize the drivers that are going above and beyond on that front. Yeah, and I know even little things like that go a very long way, more than you'd ever expect. Well, and cookouts too. Cookouts. We do a lot of cookouts as well. Food brings people together. It does, yeah.
Well, hey, Ben, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your insights with everyone on the call. You, TCW, you all have built a fantastic organization that I think we all aspire to be. And thank you again for the commitment to ATRI and helping our industry be safer. Everyone on the call, thank you for joining us. We really appreciated your time. We will see you next time for our Fleet Leader Chat. And as always, please stay safe.